Review from Daf Chaf Dal to Daf Lamed 24 to 30 of Sanhedrin. It's all about Edim, about witnesses, about puzzle Edim, about interrogating the Edim, and about how Edim are related to each other. Right. A little bit, of course, about Dayanim still, but mainly about Edim. Okay, so we had started at the beginning of the parak last on Daf Chaf Gimel, and there was an interesting statement. The mayor said over there that you can, like today, we cancel people. So you can cancel one of the Edim, or you can cancel one of the Dayanim. So that's very strange, especially if you're being judged. Why should you be able to cancel one of the Edim? That doesn't make sense. Right. Okay. Right. Okay. So what does a mayor mean? You can cancel one of the Edim or one of the Dayanim. That's not usually how it works, especially if you're being judged. So we had one shot last week. The second shot was there was a lot of Dayanim. So you can cancel out a lot of Edim, so you can cancel out some of them and say they're related because there will always be others to testify against you. The second shot was Tzarech Levar, which means if there's many Edim, if a person presents several riots, do you have to bring all of them? So it's also the same concept, but it's based on Tzarech Levar, which is our first slide, which we can go to, just to get that. This is not the first one. Tzarech Levar, simple. Okay, so Tzarech Levar means if you have a lot of proofs, do you have to bring all the proofs or not? So you have to bring all 10 Edim. So then you can disqualify some. That's what Meir holds. This week's Daf Chaf Dal starts out with an interesting migu. It's not the usual migu, and this is the third shot of the Maseches, which we sort of fall off of. That he brought Edim, also these Edim, and now he wants to be believed that the Dayanim are also bad, right? The Edim Sum Dayan Ksher, meaning the guy is being judged. So he brought outside witnesses that these witnesses are no good. And he says, believe me that the judges are no good, because I already proved the Edim are no good, so it must be I'm telling the truth. It's not the traditional migu. You see the Rashi says, Baldim Posel Dayanim, right? He's canceling out Dayanim, but the Edim, Nimsu Edim, the Nimsu Edim, right? He already canceled them out. Canceled out the Edim. He brought Edim that these Edim are bad. Now he wants to get rid of Dayanim also. So there's a svara. Meir would say we believe in Beth Dayanim. So the Gemara doesn't like that. The Gemara falls off that. The Gemara says that you can't say just because you pass the Dayanim. Well, the Gemara says one way you could say Migud you pass the Edim, you pass Dayanim. The reverse, Migud you pass Dayanim, pass Lama Edim, right? So the Gemara says you can't say that. Why? Because Dayanim is a svara to believe because there's always other judges you can get. If you pass these judges, you just take 3 guys down the street, 3, let's say even Roy Bakar, which we get to. But if these Edim are canceled, then there's no court case, obviously. So Gemara says it must be, and Gemara swore for the last pshat that there's other Edim. So since there's other Edim, so it's basically like the first 2 pshatim, that since there's other Edim, so we let him cancel out these Edim, because anyway, it won't matter so much. Obviously, if you're being judged, you want to get rid of as many witnesses as you can. But people do that these days also. They disappear them. But yes. So, but again, we would only allow a guy, even according to Meir, to cancel him if there's backup Edim. We won't allow him to throw out of his own court case. Rish Lakish had said about Rav Meir, right? how could a holy mouth say this? So you see, Rashi's Reish Lakish was very smart, and he was smarter than Reb Meir, but he called him Meir Pek Kadosh, right? Reb Meir. So we see Reish Lakish was praising Reb Meir, right? Reb Meir was Oker, as Reish Lakish was Oker Harm, and Reb Meir was Oker Hare Harm. The Tochnos Zavazes, they're both very big lamdan. So the Gemara brings a number of cases where the Talmidei Chachamim showed love to one another. The Gemara says that Rebbe was Machniyat Rabbi Yossi, even though Rebbe was clearly greater than Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara says if Rabbi Yossi was alive, he would be bent over and sitting in front of Rebbe, but Rebbe still gave him cover. But the Gemara digressed a little. A difference between Talmidei Chacham Shel Eretz Yisrael and Talmidei Chacham Shel Bavel, and there's a long Rasha on this also, which says an interesting pshat. But basically, the Talmidei Chacham is highlighted over here. Talmidei Chacham and Eretz Yisrael are nice to each other. They're na'im, they're sweet, as opposed to Talmidei Chacham and Bavel, who are rough. Now, obviously, if you're rough, then rough in learning, so maybe they, get deeper pshat. And this Mashas is tied in later with the Gemara says that Bavel has a lot of gasas ruach, Yodlu Bavel. Gemara says first it went down to Bavel, and then it went down to Elam, which is nearby. But the Gemara, and then the Gemara brings a pasuk from Eichav, Machshakim Hoshivani Kimei Olam, Zet Hamul Shel Bavel. Some people extrapolate this to Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi, but it's interesting pasuk. You bring a pasuk from Eichav back Gemara that it's Machshakim Hoshivani. Hashem put me down in the choshech, in the dark. And Rashi says, "She'ein nochem zelzeh v'talmudam safek biyadam, sipek biyadam, safek biyadam." I don't know, but basically, learning is very rough in Bavel. Some people say that's why they get better pshat. So the Gemara says maybe because they have gasas ruach, so they're more bold in their pshatim. Fine. But that started from the fact that Reish Lakish was praising Reb Meir. Fine. Okay. More God till later, not now. That's pretty good. Here's one of the things they're talking about was this is totally off topic, but there was Hatmana. You can't do Hatmana B'chol, which is Toldos Chama, but you can't do Hatmanas Chanan, but you can do Hatmanas Tzonein in sand because there's no Gzera that you're going to put this here. You're going to put a hot pot here. Fine. And here's Elam, which is near Bavel. So the gases went from Bavel and went down to Elam. I think over here. Yeah, right? Aristotle's over here, no? I believe. Here are Shlosh Roy Bakar. They have sound. What's the Hebrew one? Fine. So the point is, if a person says Nemanlai Abba Vicha, Nemanlai Shlosh Roy Bakar, the first column is the main column. This is off that Daf Yomi Advancement Forum site. Basically, it's a simple machlokas, and it's going to grow into several different machlokasim. But all the machlokasim, this first column is Nagaya, which means you're a mayor, you could take it back. Do you say, I accept those three fellows in the barn as judges? So the mayor says you could take it back, or both say you cannot take it back, meaning what you say is binding. This is, if you say it's Kishnei Dayanim, whatever. But this is the basic machlokas. The mayor says you could take it back, and Rabban says you can't take it back. And we'll see this in the Gemara. Now, this is a very exciting chart, but it could be when you said, I'm accepting these two people, is it Lefnei Gemadin or Achar Gemadin, right? And we know Reish Lakish says the first line we know. The first line of this chart is for sure. So that machlokes of Meir and Rabbanon, right? Rabbi Meir says you could be choser, and Rabbanon says you cannot be choser. So the question is that only before Gemara Din? That's what Shlokish is saying. Before Gemara Din, Rabbi Meir said you could be choser. After Gemara Din, then they already issued their psak. You said these three cattle guys are believed. That's it. Rabbi Yochanan said, we don't know what he said over here. He says machlokas, whether you could be choser after the Gemara Din. Meaning Rabbi Yochanan holds, Rabbi Meir holds you could be choser even after these three cattlemen issued their psak din. Right? That's Rabbi Yochanan's version of Rabbi Meir. Questions, we know what he holds of Neighbor Gemara Din. Would everyone, even the Rabbanon, agree? Right? The Rabbanon who say you can't be choser, that's only over here. But everyone agreed before Gemara Din, when there's these cattle guys are still talking about it, then would everyone agree you could be choser? Right? So we bring Rava. This is summarizing a bunch of lines in the Gemara, but Rava says this halacha. So we could say that he is in the Rabbanan Shita, right? Again, the Rabbanan hold that you cannot be choser, which is what he says over here. So the same Rabbanan, he would say over here, would say l'fnei Gemara that you could be choser. So we're assuming Rabbi Yochanan holds, maybe he holds like Rava, right? Again, or maybe not. Maybe Rava is it could be Rava's and Reish Lakish, but we're assuming Rava's saying pshat like Rabbi Yochanan. So that's one of those. So Mahog's of Mary, you could be choser, Bunny can't be choser. And the question is, do they argue with Snake Madin and Achat Madin? And the question is, who is saying that I'll accept these guys, or I'll accept those? Another case also, I'll accept the lower shvuah, right? Is the plaintiff who's trying to collect saying, I'm mochel, basically, I'll believe these guys, whatever they say. So that's like mechila, we don't have to go to court. Or eten, the guy who's being charged, the defendant, the guy who's owing the money, is he saying, I'll give it according to what this court will say. Obviously, if he's guilty, right? If they pass like him, everyone's happy. So the same, this is the same structure as before. Here it's Shmuel, not Reish Lakish. The same thing, the same exact slide. Huh? Right, I'm sorry, right, Shmuel's right. Okay, and as far as, by the way, as far as over here, Achar Ma'adin, it's very hard to hear that you could be choser because you accept these cattle fellows, right? You accepted them as your judges. That's it. The svar of Eten is because there was no kinyan. He said, "Yeah, I'll go." If they say I'm chayav, I'll be chayav. That's not, you can't obligate yourself. If you say I'm be mochel, you can be mochel alone. And if there's edim, which we'll get to soon, if there's edim and whatever, you write it down. You told people write it down, not the people hiding in the cemetery, right? Then it works. You could be. It's much easier to be mochel, to make that binding than if you say etin, I will give it. There's no king. You're just saying, yeah. If they say I'm guilty, I'll be guilty. Fine. Again, but the same basic. So this is in the machlokus from Meir Rabbanan. What would they say? What are they talking about? They're talking about who, the lender or the borrower, right? And it's more of a svara that the borrower's commitment is not binding because he could say, I said I give it to you, but not retract. There's no kinyan. There's no kanamiyado. So just to see that shortly, in the short form of the Gemara, the Mishnah we should read. Like the picture we had of the three cattlemen. So the mayor says you could take it back, and the Chum say you can't take it back. And the same parallel case with the Shvuah, if he was chayv to Shvuah, and usually you have to say like all the Shemons of Hashem and etc. And you have to hold the Sefer Torah, I believe. Yes, yes. And he's like, no, just doli b'chai roshecho. You don't have to do that. Just swear by your own life. That's enough. Meir says again, yacholachsa chamzei yacholachsa. And again, the Gemara is detailing that all those charts. And this is where they talk about machol and etain. The reverse order I had the slides in. Machol is machlach etain lefekol. And then Reish Lakish is talking about Lefnei Gemara Din. Again, after Gemara Din, it's very hard to hear why you should be able to take it back. The Gemara says before next Mishnah, after we sort all that out, if it's Kadam Yado, then obviously everything's binding. If you do a real Kenyan, you can commit to anything in the world, basically. If you do, even if it's a Fneg Mardin, which is more reason because if you committed yourself and you made a Kenyan to make it binding, like you do Bachas, to make a Kenyan, then in Lacha Kenyan Klum, there's no going back. All right. Now there's an interesting Mishnah. I think it's probably one of the most famous Mishnayos in Shas, if you ask me. These are apostle people. Sachar B'Kuvia. He gambles. Malv Ribis. He lends with Ribis, which is Asur Mafricha Yonim, and they have pigeon races. One shot V'Sochei Shvius. People sell Shemitah. And then Rabbi Shimon says that they call them Osvei Shvius. Fine. And then Rabbi Yehuda qualifies this, which we'll get to in a second. That's if they don't have a profession. If they have a profession, they're just gambling on the weekends. They go down to Atlantic City on Sunday, then that's fine. These are just illustrative. These are people who are collecting ribis, not people sharks. This is Maseches B'Kuvia. I'm not going to play the whole thing, whatever. And okay, Nazir we'll get to in a second. That's Nazir brings Zariah. That guy's a Nazir passing by, but 1 second. We'll get to that in 1 second. Okay, I gotta move. Fine. So there's two reasons why gambling is bad as far as aid is. Either because Mishum have a smachta, but you don't think you're gonna lose. So you don't really commit. You put $100 down on that table that we just saw. You don't really think you're never going to see $100 again. You think you're going to pick up $200 in a second. Or the other thing is the feature Eidos going to be sure shalom. They're not productive members of society. Well, that's a smacht, right? That's inside a smacht, right? Yeah. Okay. I think. The Gemara asked that kasha, but no, the Gemara asked on Mafichion. That's a thief. We'll get to it in a second. On the other pshat Mafichion, not in the racist pshat. So obviously, what's the nafkamina? The difference is if he has another job, then just like we say, gambles on the weekends. Now, Rabbi Yehuda qualified the end of the Mishnah, and he said that, like we just said, if they have another job, it's fine. Yeah, Gemara says, according to the Mishnah, if you hold asmachta, then that shouldn't matter if they have another job. If you steal on the weekends, it's still bad. Every weekend you go to Atlantic City, and that's considered stealing. So you're puzzleatus. You don't have to steal every day to be puzzleatus. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the Rabbi Tarfon says the reason that's smachta, and there's Rabbi Tarfon is another shita which argues on the Mishnah again because the Mishnah is mashma the reason we should shalom because it says they have another job, it's fine. Rabbi Tarfon says the reason is smachta and that's why it's bad. He's arguing like Rashi says, Polga der ban masisim, Kamayim Mishim Yishuv. Now, what's the case of Tarfon's talking about? The case of Nazir, where they see a Nazir passing by, and they make an ambiguous statement, such as, right. Right. So it's a little confusing. It's ambiguous, their statement. And Rav said that does not work. Obviously, the case of Nazir does work, which we learned from Nazir says, hey, if the guy's passing by and you say, hey, or aha, then it means he's a Nazir. But Rav says those cases are too ambiguous. Why? Because we don't know if he is really a Nazir or not. It looks like he is, but they're saying if he's a Nazir, which means they're mesupik about it. So then a smachta is not good. So he would also explain our Mishnah, a smachta lo kanya. Because I guess we know the Mishnah is a smachta. The question is, does it work or not? When you're putting $100 down on the table, do you think you're going to see that again? If you don't think you're going to see it again, it's not Kanya, which means when the other guy picks it up from you, he's stealing. Fine. Um, so there was a little confusion about Lova and Malva, and it depends if you have the Kudus in your Gemara or not. But basically, it's the both and the Malva and the Lova, Malva and the Lova, who are involved in ribbis. And the reason basically is the reason the person puzzle aid is because we think someone's going to pay him off to say false edus. So the Lova also is involved. I think we mentioned this last week also. The Lova is involved in an Avera because he's getting money out. He's not being paid the ribbis. He's paying the ribbis. He's losing money, but in the way he's getting the big loan, so he's doing an Avera because he needs the money from the loan, which also, that's also getting money, is the time value of money. So the Malva, it's both about the Malva and the Lova. One thing, which is, if a person says, I borrowed from this guy Baribis, he's believed that he is puzzle. He's not believed about himself, he's believed in the other guy. Why? Because um, so it's Palgini Dibur, the famous concept that we believe him that the other guy is a Malva Baribis, we don't believe him on himself. It's funny because he's saying I'm puzzle Adis. We don't believe that part because he can't talk about yourself. But he's believed in the other guy. Fine. How do you fix up? The Gemara is going to talk more about this in Amar Beis. Basically, a lot of different ways to do tshuva. If a person's selling treif meat, then he has to go to a place where they don't recognize him and return an aveda, right? And not like the guy who returned the guy's wallet. So he thought it was very honest. Then he bought a car from him 3 months later, and the car was a lemon. So, right. I guess that's why he has to go to a place where they don't recognize him. Or shiotzu treifa tachas yodo, a behemoth is very expensive, and if he admits that this behemoth is a treifa, the davar chashuv mishalo. That's sort of his tshuva. Again, this is not the Adis thing. This is a guy who's selling treifas, but again, he has to rectify and show he's being honest. There's two pshat marficha yonah. One is I don't have the pictures here. The one is the bird races, and the other is that you send your bird or your animal to go get other animals, right? Because somehow you train your animal to go bring back other animals. So you're stealing. That's really a case of stealing, which is zeal. So in each case, there's a tzrichasa on the bottom. Told us Atzma knows he could say that the guy who's gambling thinks he's going to win. Each guy thinks he's going to win because it's based on skill. Or you could say each guy the other way by the pigeon races. You could say that each guy thinks that I'm going to win the pigeon race because, I'm skilled in training my pigeon. You have that stick, that stick, which they have this long stick, which apparently you attract the pigeons or something like that. But that's the only dome. But Naksha Tayyib also. Naksha is apparently Rashi says Shesha Daf. Somehow you work it out with the pigeons that you control them. So that's really just a skill. He's saying I'm a better pigeon controller. It's like baseball, I guess. Football, whatever. Fine. So what's their tshuva? So you have to basically break all the Maseches is Ptasim, which maybe is dice. Rashi says Shiva Eitzim, so I guess it's not dice, but something like that. When's Tshuva? You got to break it. You got to break your board, your backgammon board, whatever it is, whatever you use to gamble. Mavid Ribis, you have to rip up the star, which means you even lose the principal, not the interest, which could be very significant. So Shvius, when's the Tshuva? You got to go far away from that also. Shagia Shvius Acheres, next 7 years down the road, the Yibadl. Fine. Gazlan Chamsan, right? The Gemara's others were you're talking about the Gazlan Chamsan, Gzela Daraisi, right? What are we talking about? Gzela. Chamas is where you grab it away from the guy who doesn't want to sell it to you. So that's Daraisa. Of course, you're not allowed to do it. So the answer is, I think maybe this is what you're referring to. This the Gemara says we're talking about Drabanos. The rice level, of course, the guys are gods, no question. Um, but the Tzias Chereshat for Katan, um, then if he grabs a Tzias Chereshat for Katan, which he's allowed to do technically because a Chereshat for Katan can't be called to something, then he's Gazlan Chamsan, right? Again, the word Gazlan Chamsan is referring to guy who grabs something that Chereshat Katan found. It's very interesting Rashi over here, very Musadik Rashi. Rashi says, right? Why is this guy puzzle? Because he desires money. Obviously, again, if he desires money, he's going to take money to be a false aid. Fine. And right, Chamsanim also the same thing, that they're too violent in their grabbing. And the Gabon, what's wrong with Gabon? Gabon is also bad, maybe. Um, so the case is where they're taking extra money for themselves. Gabon, they used to collect the taxes, used to have right from the government, the local government, to collect the taxes. If they're taking extra for themselves, then they're stealing. I guess you have a kasha, that's Gazil Doraisa. The Gemara says, interesting, Stam Roa Apostle, Stam Gaba Kasher. So Stam Roa, if you don't know anything about a shepherd, you could assume he's letting his animals graze wherever he wants. But Stam Gabbai Kasher. And the Gemara tells a story of a Gabbai of the taxes, not Gabbai Tzedakah, a Gabbai of the taxes, where he used to say this pasuk, which apparently is a song, but I don't know the song, so I can't sing it for you. Lech imi baba chaderecha, lech imi baba chaderecha. I don't know. I should have. Oh, lech ami. Right. So lech ami baba chaderecha. So basically, he would say that as a signal to the people who understood what he was saying, that they should hide because he was, I guess, coming in advance of the government's tax collector. So he would sing this pretty song about how everyone should go to the Chadarecha, and the people who got the hint hid away. So he was a very inskap stoko, and Kinech Nafshe, when he died, then he had 13 coins which were in his room, and he said, make sure to give them back to this guy because they were collected in excess of the taxes for some reason. So he was a very, very honest guy. So Stam Gabay of taxes could be a nice guy. So people, what happened is people would hire Aniyim, because Aniyim are allowed to go collect, everyone's allowed to go collect stuff from Shemitah. They would hire them, and then they would pay them a little bit, obviously a very low rate for the fruit that they were gathering. So they stopped that. And then apparently this could be a bigger sugya, but there was Arnona, which meant that the government was pressing them to pay a certain tax. And since they had to pay a certain tax, then then they said you're allowed to work on Shemitah, but apparently this is only when it's an imminent threat to their lives, or they're saying they want the tax. The other side of the threat is if you don't pay a tax, then they'll put you in the pit without food. So it's a very imminent threat, not like people want to apply it apparently these days to Shemitah, when it was very hard in the old days in the Eretz Yisrael, it was very hard to live, very little food, but apparently the Chazon Ish said that it doesn't apply, even though it's hard, but it's not like pikuach nefesh right then and there. The Gemara tells a very interesting story, a long story. Reish Lakish wanted to see people be ma'abed a month, which we talked about a lot ago. So he went along, and they passed these fellows who were being ma'abed a month, passed people working on the field, and each time they were malamed tzchus. And Reish Lakish didn't like why are you being malamed tzchus so much? I guess it is a mitzvah, obviously, malamed tzchus, but he felt it was inappropriate. So basically, they said this guy is a pain. And they said Terudahu Dain, which Rashi says Kantron. He's what did you say? He's a pest, and he's a nudge, right? So he So they were sleeping in the attic, And I'm sorry, they were being ma'aber Shana in the attic. It's interesting because we learned before also that when the 8 people came up to the attic and there was supposed to be 7, they're also in the attic. So they took away the ladder so he couldn't come. So he was mad at them and he called them basically Roy, but he was talking, he had a conversation with himself about what's going on here. And he said, well, I guess at least the Roy Bucker could talk about the new month. He said, these guys are bad guys, they're excusing all this bad behavior, but I guess they should be standing up to it. They must be like the Roy Bucker who are Bima of the month. And Mar told about them before that they just saw different things about the season. They're like, oh, well, the butterflies are doing this and this. It must be the spring is coming early. Like there wasn't really Bima of the month. So he was very critical of these people. And they came to Rabbi Yochanan and he said, they said, Amr Loi Karilo and Roy Bucker. And basically Rabbi Yochanan agreed with Rish Lakish, who's Chavrusa. And he said, maybe he should have called you Roy Tzon, which I guess is a lower level. It's a lower level to be a shepherd than the cattle rancher. Because he agreed that you should give these people a little mussar. Related to, we're trying to bring a raya where Reish Lakish called him Kesher Risham. So where did Kesher Risham come from? So it's coming from Shevna. Here we have a picture of it even. Right. Oh, here's one of the things they said that they were gathering this stuff to make these ropes on the olive press. They weren't really harvesting the stuff. So on this arrow, which he threw over the walls, he says Shevna Siata Shlima Chizki Siat Lo Shlima. Shevna wants to have a peace treaty. Chizkiah doesn't. So that was making a lot of trouble. And right, so he had a lot of Talmidim, and Chizki was afraid. Chizki said maybe, Min Shemaim, they said he should be right. Right, maybe Hashem passed him by the robe, and Shevna, right, his Magachir, and he had more Talmidim than Chizki. So Chizki was afraid maybe Hashem's gonna pass him like Shevna. But it didn't work. What happened in the end is that Shevna went out with all his men out of the walls to make peace, and also Gavriel, the last words on the right after the Dashi closed the gates with. So he went out, and his people were following him, and the gates closed. So he just went out alone, and he realized he was alone. He couldn't turn back because the gates were closed. So he said, "Where is everyone?" And he said, "They must have turned around. I don't know." So he said, "You're just making fun of us." And they made holes in his feet, and they dragged him to Susaim, really horrible death. And they dragged him on thorns. And this came because Shevna was a Baal Hana. We learned from Sukkim, whatever. We learned that he was a Baal Hana. That's why he met his end in such a way. Besides stop being in Russia, it was particularly not Hana way of ending his life. Right. I mean, I guess he must have been a Talmud Chacham. I don't know. But fine. One second. Okay, halachas like Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. That if you have another job, you can gamble, so everyone can go to Atlantic City on the weekends. If there's anything doing there still. Huh? Right, I guess if you're retired, you can't gamble the whole week. You have to do a part-time. And if a person is in the if you're in one of these categories, Bezin has to call out, which is, I guess, not the American way of doing things, but you have to call out in Bezdin that this guy is puzzled because he's whatever. This guy's a gambler, he's puzzled Eidos. If he's Gazan Darais, you don't have to call it out. Which is interesting, it's not a pig, not a PIG. If it's Rashi says Makablit stuck in Anachim. If a person gets stuck in the Goyim and people know about it, that's also very bad. I don't know if it passes, it seems like it passes. It says which is big chiddush. And again, if obviously his life depends on it, which is probably the case if he's collecting from Goyim, then it's fine. If he's suspected on Arias, then he is kosher Eidos again because there's no money involved. The question is if he could say a woman's he can't say a woman's divorced because he wants to marry her. Yula, maybe he can't even be believed to say he can't be believed to say a woman's married because because he wants her to be married. He wants to say Eidos falsely that she's married, so she'll have a status of being married. So then he wants to be with her and she'll be more usher to him. So it's a little, she's not really married. We're suspecting he's saying falsely she's married, so she'll have a status of marriage because we'll trust him and she possibly married because he wants to be with her as a married woman. That's what Moran says. So that was the havmin of Shalom, the kam of the shichle. That was the havmin. And the maskana is, but it's a legitimate havmin. The shmuz is from havmin. Maskana is that as much as the more accessible she is, the better it is, and it's better not to get a husband involved. Okay. Eid Zomen. So we have Abaye say Eid Zomen, just to go to the charts for a second. Moving right along, Yal Kagam. I know what happened to the first letters. It's Yir Shalom Midas, Eid Zomen, Lechi. Yeah. Anyway, we have two cases here. We got a double. We got Eid Zomen, Lafreel Nifso, and Mumroch Lavels. Eid Zomen, here's the Eidus one they said. This Then they said Eidus two. This is the Eidus that they were nizam about, that people say they Manu Hayisam, and this is when they became Zomen. So everyone agrees going forward, that's what this red arrow is. Of course, the apostle. Going backwards, obviously this Eidus is when they were found to be somewhere else where they didn't say they were. The question is, does it go back? Rava says it does not go back. Abai says it does go back, and even this Eidus is bad. The reason Rava doesn't go all the way back is either to protect the Lakuchos, because they could have been Eidus on the sale. If you say the whole sale is no good, it's a big problem. Or he says the whole reason is the whole thing is a chiddush. Two against two, right? Two Adam say we were there, two Adam say we weren't there. Why do you relying on one, relying on the other? Difference is, if it's yeah, this is in the wrong place, I think. If they're saying is about money or not. Again, if there's no lakuchos involved, then maybe you wouldn't want to you wouldn't pass on them because of lakuchos. Oh, right. The Zoma here are talking about the first Edus, right? Mm-hmm. They're saying that Imano Hayisim by this first Edus, but in the middle is Edus Karka, so then you're messing up these buyers. If it was a woman getting married in the middle, right, then you don't have that problem necessarily of messing up buyers, you're just messing up the chasna. That's true. The Gemara compares it, just moving a little fast. The Gemara compares it to another machlokes. If you're huzim l'mammon, are you pasul fashas, kashal fashas? The Gemara wants to align these two machlokes. Again, it's the sort of same topic we were talking about before. If a person he's bad in areas of money, is that also bad in areas of fashas or not? And then the Gemara says maybe they can all align and say, guys, kashal and fashas. Okay. There's a long story in the Gemara, just to remind you where it is before we get to the relatives. It's about that time of the day, where this guy basically had witnesses that he was convicted of murder, that he murdered. And there were witnesses that these Adim that he killed stole. So the whole question here, do we pass him that if the Adim stole, they're good for the Nefashos or not good for the Nefashos? Right? Who's in the moment? Are they good or not good for the Nefashos? And in the end, it was passed him that they are not good witnesses. So Kam Rachama is the fellow who was accused of murder. Nashke Akari, he kissed him on his knee, on his feet, and he accepted to pay his taxes for a whole year. But he was so grateful for the psak that if they are who's Mulmaman, then they can't say Nefashos either because he was being judged for Nefashos. All right, quickly to do the relatives since it's so early. Okay, Elohen Absalom. These are the possible relatives. So this is a list. Who is the guy which we're referring to? His father, his mother, his stepfather, his brother, his wife, his father-in-law, and his wife's sister-in-law, and his brother-in-law. His brother-in-law, this guy is very far away. here's the whole list of the Mishnah. This is the text of the Mishnah. If you follow the Mishnah, Achiv, Achi Aviv, his brother's uncle, whatever, all these relatives, Achi Imo, his uncle from his mother's side, his mother's brother, Ba'alachoso, his sister's husband, Ba'alachos Aviv, Ba'alachos Imo. Now, the Mishnah says, this chart is not exactly in the Mishnah. Let's move that. To the sign. It is over here. Okay, so them, their kids, and their sons-in-law. So that's 24. The Mishnah says it's 24. This 32 is for a later point in the Gemara. Fine. And the Gemara also says Chargo is a stepson. So this is the guy. He's married to his wife, and she was this almana from her previous husband, but they had a kid together. So in this case, there's machlokes of Yossi and they're abundant whether the son of this kid is not related to him really at all, right? It's his wife's kid, but it's his stepkid. So the question is, does that go down a generation or not? To summarize the most difficult part of first the source, and I don't think I have the puzzle here, do we? Okay. No. The whole puzzle, I don't have the puzzle case, is lo yumsu avos abanim. Ubanim lo yumsu avos. So from that puzzle, we learn out a couple things. We learn out even cousins and even from other people. Two brothers can't testify and other people, even the Aim, even Lazakos. So there's a bunch of drushos the Gemara makes, right? For the extra words, so banim and ubanim, right? Of course, the meaning of the pasuk is that sons don't die for their father's sins, except if they continue those sins, they actually do get punished for them. But we learn a bunch of these things out for the Krovim. Now, just to go into Rav for a second. Okay. I have special notes on this. Rav said 3-1 is bad. This guy cannot testify. Right? Now the Mishnah does not go down the third level. The Mishnah only talks about 2-1. From level 2 to level 1, meaning he cannot testify about Bas Dod. Right? The Mishnah doesn't go down to the third level. From him down to here. Rav says he could 3 cannot testify about 1, right? Right. So the question is, the Mishnah does not talk about that. And the answer is, the Mishnah was talking about this guy. So this guy is really bumped down to level number 3, and the Mishnah is talking about. The question is, if the Mishnah was talking about 3 levels down, this is what 3 generations looks like. Right? So if the Mishnah was talking about 3 generations down, there should have been 32 altogether. Right? Beno and Ben Beno. Hassan, in this chart, the Chassan is under the Ben. It's not another generation. Chassan is a son-in-law. So it's Achiv and Beno. Beno and Chassan are really on they're really the same level. Right? But the Mishnah did not talk about Ben Beno, or else there would be 32 people. And the answer is that no, Rabbi Lazar was talking about. So first we said either this guy who's a 2 is considered like a 3. So the Mishnah was talking about that. Or Rabbi Lazar was also said that a 3 can't testify against a 1. So that's Rav's source. But the Mishnah, one thing is clear, 2 things are clear, I think. Number 1, Rav holds even the 3, which again, this is to this guy from this son-in-law. It's his wife's father's uncle, right? So Rav says you cannot testify that way. And the Mishnah is not discussing those cases. The Mishnah is not discussing this third level down. That's too far, and it could be you could, according to the Mishnah, testify on that. And Belazar holds even that level. Shlishi b'sheni is still usher. these guys are the furthest relation you can go, because and they're close to each other on the chart, but um, it's his grandfather's nephew, right? Huh? So this guy is this guy's son, is this guy's son. So it's his grandfather's nephew. So that's a little far. Rav would say actually that this case is good. Rav says Shlishi B'Sheni. In a way, this case is further than this. This is a little more direct because you're just going up, right? It's his wife's father's uncle, his wife's great uncle. This case is a little more convoluted if you think about it because it's his grandfather's nephew. We have short ways of saying it. We have to go up here and down there. Fine. So Rav would say this case is mutter, but the Mishnah again is not talking about this third level. It's not talking about Ben Beno. Only Rebbe Loz is talking about Ben Beno. Fine. Kavshan Zrachik. Second is good. And Rabbi Yehuda said, this is again, Kavshan, this is him, is his son-in-law. His daughter died, but they had kids. So really, his connection to this kid is his daughter who died. So this is Kavshan Zrachik. So Rabbi Yehuda holds that he's still usher. Why? Because it's still his grandson. This makes sense. I'm saying just in the Baal Batish way, like it's his grandson, so it makes sense. The Gemara also talks about Olev and Asone. Just back to 1 second. Right, those are all the sheets there. 1 second. I marked up my Gemara. Fine. We're talking about carving this rachim, but that whole daf is that stuff with Rav and the Mishnah just is too difficult to decide. Or even the Sone, right? How if you're a guy's friend, how long are you his friend? So either through Shem Brachos or the day he's married. That's basically it. And then you're not considered his friend. And a Sone is if you don't speak to each other for 3 days, and always the fancy says Pshat. At the end of the Mishnah, as it says the Jews are not nechshad al kach, which the Mishnah really means the Jews are not nechshad to hate a person so much as say false testimony. He said maybe you could say Pshat that Jews would not speak to another Jew, would not hold back for speaking to a Jew for another 3 days. In either case, even though you could testify, according to the Rabbanon, you could testify, you cannot be a judge because the judge is special, right? The judge needs to be objective. Well, I guess the aid is an aid, and we don't think it's say false testimony, but any slight variation in the judge, of course, will be maybe because you could get another judge from down the street. You don't have to judge the guy. But if you're a witness and you saw one on, you got to be the witness. That's it. Also, if Tutim and Chum hate each other, why do they hate each other? Because they think the other guy did something usher. And Yoshmin Echad, they can't sit on one bezdin, which is makes sense because they'll fight a lot. Okay, the Mishnah goes into the whole procedure about scaring the Edom. So you bring them to a dark room, and you I don't know, it's a dark room, and you tell them about all the punishments that can happen. Now the next blot is talking about basically people admitting. So if you have a guy admit to you that he owes you money, there has to be in front of Edom, and you have to say Atem die. So there's a case in the Gemara where he took him into a cemetery, and the guys were hiding behind a tombstone that wasn't good. And there's a case where they hid inside like a bed with a canopy around it. It wasn't good and he asked him, so are you going to say testimony, so anyone can hear the dead and the living? He said, actually not. I'm afraid to do that. As a side point, the Gemara brings an Einton Maseches. If we time it for a person different times in court, but if a person is trying to push people away from Hashem, then you don't say anything. We learn that from the Nachash. The Nachash could have said, why did Chav listen to me, but he didn't get a chance to say it. Fine. Right. And if a person before he's dying says, this is where I hid the money, then and I owe it to someone else, he's not believed to say I owe it to someone else. Why? Because a person wants to make believe his kids aren't rich. So that's one day. Um, that's what Chia says. That the person will say that even though he doesn't really owe the other guy money. Um, again, if it's written in front of Adam, it says that we were a Bezdin, we sat here, then Adam close we assume if it came from the Bezdin, then we don't ask questions. The Bezdin is correct. Again, interesting Gemara. This was today's daf. If a guy had a dream, right? He had a dream that the money was in the field, and it said, and except it said in the dream, the money is minus the sheni. So that part of the dream, you don't have to believe. Obviously, part was true because he went to the field, he found the money. All right, just finishing up the. So how do you write the psak, right? How do you write the psak? Do you write who says guilty, who says innocent? No. Generally, you do not because it's lashon hara. You can't write we all says guilty because it's not true. One says innocent. So you write from this bezin came out guilty or innocent. That's the psak we go with lamaisa. Then is just to show the chart will almost be done. There are two various machloks, and do you have to see the edus together or apart? And can you see the edus? Do they have to testify together apart or apart? The Mishnah says afterwards you bring everyone in. What does it mean you bring everyone in? Does it mean they have to say edus together? If two people see two different loans, they could be mitzvah of them. If they see, yeah, then but both of them say are for $100, you could be mitzvah, right? If they have a hodah achava, no, no, but the guy owes $100. That's what I think. That's the picture says. Oh no, I'm sorry. Oh, next, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. Right. Oh, because this is about money, right. So, if he admits in two separate days, then it's fine. Or it's hodah chava, then it could be that. Right.
Or it could have been about that.
Right. Then it was two separate loans, like you're saying. That's like hava, and that is bad. And that's basically it. That's a wrap.